Disclosure. The compositions presented herein are a rich amalgamation of nearly 4 decades of life experience, 56 years of a loving marriage, and 62 years of dedicated ministerial experience. Throughout my journey, I have been shaped by the invaluable lessons learned in the School of Hard Knocks, which has informed my perspective and creativity. To bring my ideas to life, I utilize a variety of computer programs, including Squibler, Gamma, Copilot, and others. These vital resources help me add depth and clarity to the thoughts and concepts that often swirl in my mind. Writing is not just a task for me, it is a cherished form of entertainment and expression that reflects my unique experiences and insights. Your understanding of this background can enhance your appreciation of the work represented here, which is deeply rooted in my life's personal and professional tapestry. Thank you for taking the time to engage with my compositions. Dedication. These vignettes are dedicated to the resilient spirits of Whitesburg, both past and present. To those who have toiled in the cotton fields, who have laughed and cried in Jake's store, who have found solace in the hymns of the Whitesburg church, and who have found comfort in the quiet dignity of the local funeral home. To the generations who have woven the rich tapestry of life in this small southern town, their stories are a testament to the enduring strength of the human spirit, even in the face of hardship. To Miss Mattie, whose hands, roughened by years of hard work, could knead the sweetest biscuits and tell the most captivating tales. Her porch swing, creaking gently in the summer breeze, was the setting for countless stories, each a tiny thread in the grand quilt of her life. She taught me the importance of listening, finding humor in even the most challenging times, and cherishing the quiet moments that make up a life well lived. This book is a small tribute to her memory, a reflection of the values she instilled in me, as sturdy and dependable as the old oak tree that shaded her porch. To the countless unsung heroes of small towns everywhere, those who keep the heartbeat of community alive, hold each other up during hard times, and celebrate life's simple joys with profound gratitude. Your strength, your compassion, and your quiet dignity inspire me daily. These stories are a testament to your collective spirit, a slight nod of appreciation for your invaluable contributions to the fabric of our world. May your stories continue to be told and retold, for they are the very essence of what it means to be human. May your laughter echo through the years, a comforting balm to those who are weary, a reminder that even in the face of adversity, hope and resilience can bloom. If names, places or events make you recall a person or event, savor it. This book is celebrating without acknowledging any personal identities. Any actual names or events that you recognize are coincidental, not intentional. This series of stories are an amalgamation of a lifetime of church ministry as a pastor. I've chosen the setting of Whitesburg because it was my first church. However, the names and the events are fictitious at times and factual at times, but never intended to reveal any personal identities or personal events. They are to tell the stories of people who have no voice but need to be remembered for the wisdom and truth which they added to my life. Please enjoy, but do not assume more than fiction. These warm memories come from my sunroom and my lift chair. My mind carries me to places where my feet can no longer carry me. This is entertainment for me. I've never thought of myself being the Dead Sea. What flows into my life flows through my life to the lives of others, which makes me a contributor to the current in the river of life. Chapter 1: The Ghost of King Cotton. Jake's store, heart of Whitesburg. The morning sun, a pale imitation of its former glory, cast long shadows across the dusty main street of Whitesburg. It slanted through the grimy window panes of Jake's general store, illuminating the swirling motes of dust dancing in the shafts of light. The air inside, however, was far from dusty. It was thick with the comforting aroma of freshly brewed coffee, mingling with the yeasty sweetness of Mrs. Henderson's still-warm cornbread, a daily offering that was as much a part of Jake's store as the rusty cash register and the chipped enamel counter. Jake himself, a man whose face seemed permanently etched with the wrinkles of worry and the lines of 1,000 wry smiles, stood behind the counter, his gaze sweeping across the assembled customers with the practiced ease of a seasoned conductor leading his orchestra. He was in a gaze that saw everything, missed nothing, and held a silent commentary on the lives that unfolded before him. He knew more secrets than the town's gossips, more sorrows than the preacher, and more joys than even the happiest bride. The Edgewater brothers, Jake and Merle, were old men by the time I met them, but their presence carried the weight of their storied past. Towering figures with rugged features, they had once been timber loggers in the prime of their youth. Their hands, though now softened by time, or the calluses of years spent felling trees and navigating the wild, untamed forests of Georgia. As young men, Jake and Merle were known for their strength and endurance. Their reputations as skilled loggers were matched only by their notoriety for brewing and drinking White Lightning, a potent homemade liquor that was as much a part of their lives as the timber they harvested. Their exploits were the stuff of local legend, tales whispered in the town's tavern and echoed in the laughter of those who dared to join them in their revelries. When I met them, the brothers had settled into a quieter existence. The wildness of their youth had mellowed into a serene compliance, making them easier to approach and converse with. Their eyes, though still sharp with the memories of days gone by, held a gentleness that belied their rugged past. They spent most of their time at Jake's store, a humble establishment on the edge of town that had become a sanctuary for the old men of Whitesburg. The store was a kaleidoscope of Whitesburg's life, a living testament to its stubborn resilience. It wasn't just a place to buy groceries, it was the town's unofficial town hall, its confessional, its comedy club. It was where deals were struck, grudges were aired, and friendships were forged in the crucible of shared experience. Old man Fitzwilliam, his overalls patched and faded like a well-loved quilt, sat on his usual stool by the window, nursing a cup of coffee and studying the dilapidated cotton mill across the street. Mr. Croft Dukes, and old man Fitzwilliam motored around the pastures checking on Farmer Duke's cows and to go to the local gathering places. Croft Dukes and old man Fitzwilliam were a pair of characters that could have stepped straight out of a Mark Twain novel. They were as different as night and day, yet their friendship had endured the test of time, molded by years of shared experiences and hearty laughter. On this morning, Croft was already parked outside Jake's store in his old, rusty pickup truck, puffing away on his corncob pipe. Fitzwilliam, as predictable as the sunrise, sauntered over, a wad of tobacco bulging in his cheek. As Fitzwilliam climbed into the passenger seat, Croft glanced sideways at him. "You better not spit that mess all over my truck again, Fitz. I just cleaned it last month." Fitzwilliam rolled his eyes. "Cleaned it?" "Croft, the only thing clean about this truck is the air freshener hanging from the mirror, and even that smells like it's seen better days." Croft snorted. "That air freshener's got more class than you old coot." Fitzwilliam leaned back, his face splitting into a grin. "Well, at least it doesn't talk back. Unlike some folks I know." Croft shook his head, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Just don't go spitting on the floor again, Fitz. Last time, Bessie nearly slipped and broke her neck." Fitzwilliam laughed heartily, spitting out the window with precision. "Bessie's got more sense than to be climbing around here. She knows better." "More sense than you, that's for sure," Croft muttered, puffing on his pipe. "Speaking of sense, you heard about young Billy Joe chasing after that city girl? What's he thinking? She's got high heels and high hopes, he's got muddy boots and a beat-up tractor." Fitzwilliam chuckled. "Sounds a bit like you and me. You always were the one with high hopes and look where it got you. Right here, fussing over a bit of tobacco spit." Croft gave him a wry look. "Least I ain't fussing over Mrs. Peabody's pecan pie recipes like some folks." "You're obsessed, man." "Obsessed? Who's obsessed?" "I just appreciate good food, unlike your taste buds, which I swear are dead as that old mill across the way," Fitzwilliam retorted, his eyes twinkling with mischief. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the kind only old friends could share. The sun climbed higher in the sky, and Croft finally broke the quiet. "You remember that time we tried to outsmart that raccoon in your backyard? Set up all those traps, only to find the critter sitting on your porch the next morning, looking fat and happy?" Fitzwilliam's laughter rang out. "How could I forget? That raccoon was smarter than us both put together. And don't forget you were the one who ended up with a face full of flour from that trap." Croft sighed dramatically. Yeah. And here I thought you'd have forgotten by now." "Never," Fitzwilliam said, still chuckling. "That's the thing about us, Croft. We might argue and fuss, but we've got a lifetime of stories to keep us laughing." "And fussing," Croft added, shaking his head. "Now, get on out before you stink up my truck with that tobacco." Fitzwilliam climbed out, taking his time. "You know you love my company, Croft." You'd be lost without me." Croft watched him walk away, a grin spreading across his face. "Lost? Nah. But it sure would be a lot quieter." As Fitzwilliam ambled back into Jake's store, Croft leaned back in his seat, the pipe between his teeth, and thought about how true those words were. Life in Whitesburg might be slow and predictable, but it was the characters that made it worth living. Spit and all. The mill, once the town's lifeblood, now stood as a skeletal monument to a bygone era, a ghostly reminder of Whitesburg's fading prosperity. Its rusting machinery whispered tales of a time when the air thrummed with the energy of 1,000 whirring spindles, a time when cotton was king. Now, only silence reigned, broken only by the mournful sigh of the wind whistling through its broken windows. Across from Fitzwilliam sat Miss Millie, her silver hair a halo around her wrinkled face, her nimble fingers knitting a vibrant scarf. She cast a keen eye on everyone, her ears attuned to the subtle nuances of every whispered conversation, every hesitant sigh, every burst of laughter. She was the town's unofficial historian, her memory a vast archive of Whitesburg's triumphs and tribulations. A single raised eyebrow could convey volumes, and a knowing glance could silence the most boisterous tongue. Then there was young Billy Joe, fidgeting restlessly by the candy counter, his eyes fixed on a jar of jawbreakers that seemed to shimmer with impossible promise. He was a boy on the cusp of manhood, his future as uncertain as the capricious weather of the South. The decline of the cotton industry had cast a long shadow on his family, leaving their once proud farm struggling to survive. The land, his family's legacy, was parched, mirroring the dryness in his parents' eyes. He dreamed of escaping Whitesburg, of a life beyond the mill's looming shadow, but the weight of family responsibility kept him tethered to the familiar soil. The air buzzed with a symphony of sounds, the rhythmic clinking of Jake's measuring spoons as he weighed out sugar for Mrs. Peabody's famous pecan pie, the low murmur of conversations woven together like a rich tapestry, the occasional squawk of a disgruntled chicken from the coop out back. These were the everyday sounds of Whitesburg, the soundtrack of its life, a melody both comforting and tinged with a melancholic undercurrent. The stories flowed as freely as coffee, each anecdote a thread in the rich fabric of Whitesburg's history. A tale of a mischievous raccoon raiding the town's bird feeders, a heated debate about the merits of using lard versus shortening in baking, a hushed discussion about young Sarah May's impending marriage to a city boy, all these seemingly trivial events played out against the backdrop of a town grappling with change, clinging to its traditions while trying to navigate a future that seemed increasingly uncertain. The gossip, a potent brew of truth and rumor, flowed like the nearby river, shaping and reshaping the town's reality. The story of the lost lottery ticket, the supposed sighting of a ghost in the old graveyard, the latest disagreement between the Baptists and the Methodists, these provided the light-hearted banter and everyday drama, a buffer against the harsh realities of economic decline. The lost lottery ticket. Whispers in Whitesburg. The town of Whitesburg had seen its share of mysteries, but none as captivating as the tale of the lost lottery ticket. It all began on a crisp autumn morning when old Sam Jenkins, the town's perennial optimist, stumbled into Jake's store with a gleam in his eye and a crumpled lottery ticket in his hand. "Just got me the winning ticket, I tell ya, Jake." Sam's voice rang out, excitement radiating from his weathered face. The regulars at the store chuckled, knowing Sam's history of wild claims and tall tales. But there was something different this time, a certain conviction in his voice that made everyone pause. Jake, ever the skeptic, raised an eyebrow and leaned on the counter. "Well, Sam, let's take a look at that ticket before you start buying the town." Sam handed over the ticket, and as Jake examined it, a hush fell over the store. The numbers matched perfectly with the previous night's winning draw. Sam Jenkins had indeed struck gold. The room erupted in cheers and congratulations, and for a moment, the weight of Whitesburg's struggles seemed to lift. But in the midst of the celebration, a shadow crept over the scene. As quickly as it had appeared, the precious lottery ticket vanished. One moment it was clutched in Sam's hand, and next, it was gone. Panic set in as everyone searched frantically, turning over every jar of candy and every sack of flour. "Must have fallen on the floor," Jake muttered, but there was no sign of it. The crowd grew silent, the excitement replaced with a sense of foreboding. Sam's joyous expression faded to one of despair. Miss Millie, always perceptive, narrowed her eyes. "Someone must have taken it," she said softly, her voice cutting through the tension. "But who?" Suspicion hung thick in the air as the townsfolk eyed one another. Had someone taken advantage of the chaos to swipe the ticket? Or had it simply slipped away, lost in the commotion? As the days passed, whispers of the lost ticket spread like wildfire. Every corner of Whitesburg buzzed with speculation and gossip. Some believed it was a sign from above, a test of the town's character. Others were convinced it was the work of a mischievous spirit, perhaps the ghost rumored to haunt the old graveyard. Sam, heartbroken, took to wandering the town, asking anyone and everyone if they'd seen his ticket. His once hopeful demeanor grew more sorrowful with each passing day. The town's sympathies were with him, but the mystery remained unsolved. Then, one foggy evening, young Billy Joe, the restless boy with dreams of escape, made a curious discovery. He had been fishing by the Chattahoochee River when his hook snagged on something submerged in the water. Pulling it up, he found an old glass bottle, sealed tightly with a cork. Inside was a piece of paper, faded and damp. Billy Joe's heart raced as he carefully extracted the note. It was the missing lottery ticket, somehow preserved within the bottle. He raced back to town, the ticket clutched tightly in his hand, a triumphant smile on his face. The town gathered in awe as Billy Joe handed the ticket to Sam, who could hardly believe his eyes. Joy and relief washed over him as tears streamed down his face. The mystery was solved, but how the ticket ended up in the river remained a puzzle. Some said it was fate, others a miracle. But as Whitesburg celebrated Sam's fortune, the deeper mystery lingered, adding another layer to the town's rich tapestry of stories. The lost lottery ticket became legend, a tale told and retold, each version more fantastic than the last. In the heart of Whitesburg, amidst laughter and tears, the community found solace in the shared experience, drawing closer together. And as the years passed, the story of the lost lottery ticket reminded them all that even in the face of uncertainty, hope and friendship could light the way. Jake would add his own laconic comments, his dry wit a balm to the town's anxieties. His words were often blunt but always laced with deep-seated compassion. He was the town's confidant, its silent guardian, dispensing not just goods, but also wisdom and solace. He knew when a sympathetic ear was needed, when a joke was appropriate, and when only silence would suffice. The women gathered around the counter, their voices a comforting chorus, their chatter a comforting rhythm. Their topics ranged from the rising price of flour to the latest episode of their favorite soap opera, their conversations punctuated by shared glances and knowing smiles. They talked about their gardens, their children, their hopes and anxieties, the small, everyday things that held the town together. Their bond, forged through years of shared experiences, was as strong as the oak trees that lined the town streets. But beneath the surface of the everyday chatter, a deeper current ran. The shadow of the closed cotton mill hung heavily over their conversations. The whispers of financial hardship, the quiet desperation of lost livelihoods, the fear of an uncertain future, these things were unspoken, yet palpable in the air. It was a town holding on to its heart, its memories, its hope, even as the world around it changed. A group of young men lounged near the back, their laughter echoing in the store's relative quiet. Their conversation drifted from football to girls, their dreams as bright as their denim jackets, though those dreams, like the cotton fields, seemed to be shrinking with each passing day. Their easy camaraderie hid a deeper unease. The few jobs left was fiercely competed for, and the lure of bigger cities whispered promises of escape. The aftermath of King Cotton. The young men recalled the pace of Banning, once a flourishing mill town, now stands as a testament to the rise and fall of King Cotton. It is a place where the echoes of the past reverberate through the empty streets and abandoned buildings. The town, nestled in the rolling hills of the south, was built on the dreams and toils of generations who worked the cotton fields and mills. But as the cotton industry waned, so did the prosperity of Banning, leaving behind a community grappling with its identity and future. The rise of Banning. Banning's history is deeply intertwined with the cotton industry. In its heyday, the town was a bustling hub of activity, with cotton mills operating around the clock to process the vast quantities of cotton harvested from the surrounding fields. The mills provided jobs and a sense of purpose for the town's inhabitants. Families moved to Banning, lured by the promise of steady work and a better life. The town grew, and with it, a vibrant community emerged. The streets of Banning were lined with well-kept houses, their gardens bursting with flowers and vegetables. The local school was a point of pride, where children learned to read and write while dreaming of futures that stretched beyond the cotton fields. The town square was the heart of Banning, where neighbors gathered to exchange news, share a meal, and celebrate their achievements. The Golden Era. During the golden era of the cotton industry, Banning was a town of optimism and growth. The mills roared with the sound of machinery, and the air was thick with the scent of freshly processed cotton. The local economy thrived, and businesses flourished. The general store, run by the affable Mr. Thompson, was always bustling with customers. The diner, with its checkered tablecloths and homemade pies, was a favorite gathering spot for families and friends. The annual Cotton Festival was the highlight of the year, a celebration of the town's success and hard work. Parades, music, and dancing filled the streets, and the community came together to honor their heritage and look forward to the future. The festival queen, crowned with a tiara of woven cotton flowers, symbolized the town's pride and unity. The fall of King Cotton. But as the years passed, the foundations of Banning's prosperity began to crack. The global cotton market shifted, and new industries emerged, leaving the once dominant cotton mills struggling to compete. The decline was gradual at first, barely noticeable among the daily routines of life. But soon, the signs of trouble became impossible to ignore. The closure of the mills. The first mill closure sent shockwaves through the community. It was a stark reminder that the security they had taken for granted was no longer assured. Families who had worked in the mills for generations found themselves without a source of income. The closure of one mill led to the closure of others, and the town's lifeblood began to drain away. The once thriving streets of Banning grew eerily quiet. The houses that had been so meticulously maintained began to show signs of neglect. Gardens grew wild, and paint peeled from wooden shutters. The school, once filled with the laughter of children, now echoed with a haunting silence. The general store saw fewer customers, and the diners' tables sat empty. The aftermath. The aftermath of King Cotton's fall left Banning in a state of limbo, a town caught between its storied past and an uncertain future. The community that had once been so tightly knit began to fray at the edges. People left in search of work, leaving behind friends and family. Those who remained faced a daily struggle to make ends meet. The lingering thoughts. In the minds of Banning's residents, the memories of better days linger like the scent of cotton in the air. Old-timers gather on porches and in the town square to reminisce about the past. They share stories of the mills, of the festivals, of a time when Banning was a beacon of hope and opportunity. Their voices carry the weight of nostalgia, but also a sense of loss. Mary Johnson, the widow of a mill worker, sits on her porch every evening, watching the sun set over the hills. Her husband, Tom, had spent his life working in the mills, and his sudden death after the mill closures left her adrift. She clings to the memories of their life together, the dances at the Cotton Festival, the laughter of their children. But the future feels like a vast, empty expanse. The lingering thoughts of Banning's demise are a testament to the enduring spirit of a town that refuses to be defined solely by its hardships. It is a place where memories of the past coexist with the hopes of the future. In the quiet moments, as the sun sets over the hills and the whispers of the cotton fields fade into the night, Banning stands strong, a symbol of perseverance and the unbreakable bonds of community. Will we be next to fall like Banning? Even the air in the store seemed to hold its breath, anticipating the next chapter of Whitesburg's story. The smell of dust and memories hung heavy, a tangible representation of the town's past clinging stubbornly to its present. The silence between conversations held the weight of unspoken anxieties, a collective apprehension about the future. Yet, amidst the uncertainty, the warmth of community, the comforting aroma of coffee and cornbread, and the gentle hum of conversation gave a sense of enduring strength, a testament to Whitesburg's spirit, stubbornly refusing to be extinguished. Jake's store, the heart of Whitesburg, beat on, a resilient rhythm against the fading symphony of the cotton fields. The ghosts of King Cotton might haunt the town, but the spirit of its people would not be so easily subdued. Jake's store, transformation by night. From general store to men's den. As dusk settled over Whitesburg, transforming the sky into a canvas of deep purples and blues, Jake's store underwent a metamorphosis. By day, it was the bustling heart of the town, a place of warmth and community where neighbors gathered to exchange news and recipe secrets. But as the shadows lengthened and the last rays of sunlight slipped below the horizon, the store became something entirely different, a sanctum for the men of Whitesburg. The transformation was subtle at first. Jake would close the heavy wooden shutters, blocking out the view of the quiet streets and the ghostly silhouettes of the cotton fields. The fluorescent lights were switched off, replaced by the soft, golden glow of oil lamps, casting flickering shadows that danced on the walls. The familiar smell of coffee and cornbread was soon overpowered by the rich aroma of tobacco and the sharp tang of moonshine, white lightning, as the locals called it. The oak table, which by day held baskets of fresh produce and jars of preserves, was cleared and transformed into a gambling table. Cards and dice appeared, along with the clink of coins and the hushed murmur of bets being placed. The men gathered around, their faces illuminated by the lamp's glow, their expressions a blend of concentration and camaraderie. Jake knew exactly what was needed to set the mood. He would bring out a worn leather pouch, from which he expertly rolled cigarettes, each one a perfect cylinder. The air soon filled with the thick, comforting haze of smoke, mingling with the tales told by the old-timers. The stories were the lifeblood of these nightly gatherings. They flowed as freely as the moonshine, each anecdote a window into the past. Old Man Harlan would recount his days working on the railroad, his eyes sparkling with the memories of adventures long past. Pete, the town's veteran, would share tales of his time in the service, his voice filled with pride and a hint of sorrow for the friends he'd lost. Even Jake, usually the quiet observer, would occasionally share his own stories, his dry wit eliciting laughter and nods of agreement. The laughter was loud and hearty, a stark contrast to the subdued conversations of the daytime. The camaraderie was palpable, a bond forged through shared experiences and mutual respect. These nights were a refuge for the men, a place where they could let down their guard and be themselves without the weight of the world pressing down on them. On a balmy Saturday night in the small town of Whitesburg, the air was thick with excitement and the unmistakable scent of popcorn and rebellion. The local watering hole, Jake's General Store, was buzzing with patrons, most of whom were engrossed in a heated game of poker at the back tables. The clinking of glasses and raucous laughter filled the room, blending seamlessly with the country tunes twanging from the jukebox. In the smoky haze, Billy Joe was on a winning streak, raking in chips like a mineworker on payday. His buddies were hooting and hollering, egging him on with every bluff and daring play. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted as the upbeat country song was jolted from the jukebox, replaced by the unmistakable piano riff of Billy Joel's "We Didn't Start the Fire." The song blared, and patrons looked around, puzzled. Was it a sign? Was someone trying to send a message? At that moment, the heavy saloon doors swung open with a dramatic creak, drawing everyone's attention. In strolled the new preacher, Pastor Hollis, looking like he had just walked out of a movie set. He was clad in a crisp, white suit with a bright red tie that screamed, "I mean business." The crowd froze, poker chips suspended midair and half-chewed bites of nachos hanging like pendants. As the piano played on, Pastor Hollis slapped a hand to his forehead, taking in the spectacle. "Oh, ye of little faith," he bellowed, his voice booming over the music. "The time has come to cleanse this place of its sins. The preacher's coming." The shocked patrons dropped their cards as if they had been caught stealing cookies from the cookie jar. "What's he talking about?" whispered one burly gambler, eyeing his cards as he stuffed them into his pocket. "Didn't he get the memo? This is Jake's annual poker palooza." But Pastor Hollis was undeterred. He marched straight up to the bar, where the bartender was still attempting to figure out which drink to serve the group of rowdy ladies in the corner. "Sir, are you pouring drinks or watering the plants? We must get right with the Lord." I've got a fine selection of craft beers," the bartender replied, a mixture of confusion and amusement painting his face. "Beer?" Pastor Hollis exclaimed, hands animated, "might as well be pouring liquid sin. You're going to need something stronger for the trials ahead." He pointed to the crowd, who was still paralyzed in shock. "And you, my friends? What do you think you're doing here? Gambling your souls away as if it were just another Friday night?" In response, the DJ, seeing the opportunity for chaos, hit the play button again, and the room exploded in laughter at the awkwardness of the confrontation. Billy Joe, ever the brave one, rose from his seat, poker chips still jangling like coins in a piggy bank. "Hey now, preacher. "Don't be so hasty," he called out, flashes of confidence dancing in his eyes. "Join us for a game. The stakes are high, and the chips are edible, well, mostly." The crowd erupted in laughter, and Pastor Hollis, despite the gravity of his mission, could not help cracking a smile. The room suddenly felt lighter, the air charged with a blend of mirth and mischief. "Very well," he relented, chuckling now. "But let it be known, I will pray for your souls while you play. And I expect all bets to be halved. After all, this is still church, even if it's just a game of cards." The revelry returned in full force as the crowd surged forward, eager to hear what kind of bets a preacher would propose. With Billy Joel still serenading them in the background, the night transformed from one of wild gambling to a hilariously divine poker match, with cards flying, laughter echoing, and a preacher trying to keep the peace amidst the chaos. As chips were raised and jokes were cracked, Pastor Hollis knew he had his work cut out for him, but hey, it wasn't the first time he had faced a slightly rowdy crowd. And as The Devil Went Down to Georgia reached its crescendo, it was clear that Whitesburg wasn't quite ready for a saint, but for now, they'd settle for a preacher who could keep up with the fun. Jake and Merle understood the most danger they posed was to themselves, a reality that had shaped their lives and the way they interacted with the world. Yet, in the confines of Jake's store, surrounded by their fellow old men, they found solace in the shared rituals of friendship. Their conversations, hushed yet animated, drifted to the town's most peculiar tales, their laughter blending with the echoes of the past. As night wore on and the mason jars of white lightning dwindled, the Edgewater brothers would lean back in their chairs, their voices growing softer, their eyes distant. In those moments, it was easy to see the young loggers they once were, men who had lived life to the fullest and had embraced every opportunity for adventure and mischief. In the end, Jake and Merle Edgewater were more than just old men with a penchant for tall tales. They were the living embodiment of Whitesburg's rich, albeit dichotomous, history, revered and forbidden, wild yet gentle, a testament to the enduring spirit of a town that had once thrived and now survived through the memories of its inhabitants. Among the many stories Jake shared at that scarred oak table, none were more beloved than those of his faithful dog, Goober. Goober was no ordinary canine. In Jake's eyes, he was a marvel, capable of tasks that defied the imagination. Jake often recounted the tale of Goober's uncanny ability to fetch items, not just sticks or balls, but everyday objects that seemed beyond the reach of a dog's understanding. One evening, Jake described how Goober had once retrieved his lost wallet from the creek, navigating the slippery rocks and swift currents with the precision of a trained search and rescue dog. The old men would nod in appreciation, their eyes wide with amused disbelief. Another favorite story involved Goober's knack for opening doors. Jake claimed that Goober had learned to manipulate the doorknob with his paws, a feat that left everyone in the store chuckling. "You'd think it was magic," Jake would say, "how that dog could twist and turn the knob just right to let himself in and out." Merle would laugh loudly, shaking his head in mock exasperation at the thought of Goober roaming freely around Whitesburg. But perhaps the most cherished story was that of Goober's heroic act during a storm. Jake recounted the night when a fierce thunderstorm had rolled through town, sending everyone into a panic. As lightning flashed and the wind howled, Goober had sensed the danger and led Jake's young nephew to safety, guiding him away from a fallen tree and toward the shelter of the store. The old men would listen in awe, imagining the scene and the courage of the loyal dog. Jake's stories about Goober were more than just entertaining anecdotes, they reflected the bond he shared with his dog, a bond built on trust, loyalty, and mutual understanding. In those moments, surrounded by friends and the comforting scent of white lightning, Jake's eyes would light up with the joy of remembrance, and the old men of Whitesburg would be transported to a world where the impossible seemed possible, and a dog's love knew no bounds. Every so often, Jake would load up his old truck with Goober sitting proudly in the back, his tail wagging in the breeze, and head out on a journey beyond Whitesburg. One memorable trip took them all the way to Plains, Georgia, where they paid a visit to Billy Carter's service station. The place was a relic of simpler times, and Jake couldn't resist indulging in a can of Billy beer, savoring the moment and the taste of nostalgia. As Jake started back home to Whitesburg, Goober, ever the eager companion, barked and pawed at the passenger door, his eyes gleaming with mischief. Jake chuckled and shook his head. "Not today, Goobs. I can't have you driving after a Billy beer." He ruffled the dog's ears, and Goober settled back, though not without a playful huff of disappointment. Their journey took an unexpected turn when they rolled into Americus, Georgia. A local policeman, stern and authoritative, flagged Jake down. "You can't ride with that dog in the back of your truck," he declared, his tone leaving little room for argument. Jake, ever unflappable, leaned out the window with a grin. "Well, officer, if you want to take Goober to the jailhouse, you'd have to put him in the car yourself." Reluctantly, the officer approached, eyeing Goober with a mix of caution and curiosity. As he began to open the truck door, Goober jumped down obediently, his tail wagging furiously. Jake couldn't resist adding, "You know, Goober's been wanting to apply for a job as a policeman anyway." With that, a chuckle ripped through the small crowd that had gathered. The officer, now smiling despite being himself, gave Goober a gentle pat. "All right, just keep him safe, and don't let him drive," he said, shaking his head in amusement as Jake and Goober continued their way. These adventures, whether near or far, were the stuff of legend back at Jake's store. The tale of Goober almost becoming the town's newest policeman would be retold countless times, each version more embellished than the last, adding to the colorful tapestry of stories that defined the spirit of Whitesburg. As the hours ticked by, the men would become more relaxed, their laughter louder and their stories more exaggerated. The moonshine flowed, lubricating the conversation and easing the aches of the day's labor. The gambling table saw its share of victories and losses, but the stakes were never more than anyone could afford to lose. It was the thrill of the game and the company that mattered more than the coins themselves. By the time midnight approached, the air was thick with smoke and camaraderie. The men's voices grew softer, their laughter more hushed, as the reality of the coming day began to seep back in. One by one, they would say their goodbyes, with Jake's store returning to its dormant state, waiting for the sun to rise and the cycle to begin anew. Jake would extinguish the lamps, open the shutters, and sweep away the remnants of the night's activities. The store would return to its daytime persona, ready to welcome the townsfolk with the comforting symphony of everyday sounds. Yet, the essence of those nightly gatherings lingered, a silent testament to the resilience and spirit of Whitesburg's men. In the quiet hours before dawn, Jake would reflect on the stories told and the laughter shared. His store was more than just a place to buy goods, it was a sanctuary, a haven where the spirit of Whitesburg beat strong, refusing to be extinguished. And as he prepared for another day, he knew that when night fell, the men's den would come alive once more, a resilient rhythm against the fading symphony of the cotton fields. Episode 1 till tomorrow.